I thought I'd finally found my people, my friends. Instead, I was slowly excluded, ignored, cropped out of photos, left waiting outside parties, lied to repeatedly, and publicly humiliated after she forgot to tell me her party's dress code. For context, there are four of us: Natty, Blake, Tasha, and me, all 26 female. We've been close friends for just under a year, but it felt intense and fast in that way adult friendships sometimes do when you really click. Natty and Blake are childhood best friends who had recently moved to the city together, while Tasha and I had been living here longer. From the beginning, it felt effortless. The four of us immediately fell into a rhythm: weekly hangouts, spontaneous dinners, nights out, inside jokes, weekend trips. It genuinely felt like I had finally found my people, that rare group where no one felt like an outsider, and everyone showed up for each other. A few months ago, we all went to an event together with some of Natty and Blake's extended friend group. That's where I met someone I'll call John. From the start, he was very friendly toward me, playful, chatty, a little flirty. At the time, I honestly didn't think anything of it because I distinctly remembered Natty mentioning, in passing weeks earlier, that he was gay. Not to stereotype, but his mannerisms, the way he spoke, and the fact that he openly flirted with men during the event all reinforced that assumption in my mind. So I treated it as harmless banter. I joked back, teased him, and didn't put any deeper meaning into it because I genuinely thought there was none. As the day went on, though, his behavior toward me escalated just enough to make me uncomfortable, not in a threatening way, but in a this feels like more than playful way. That's when I started questioning myself. I remember thinking, did I misremember? Am I mixing him up with someone else? I made a conscious effort to pull back and planned to ask Natty later, privately, just to clarify so I didn't accidentally cross any lines. Before I even had the chance to bring it up, Natty pulled me aside and told me that she had actually been sleeping with John for a few months. She explained that they had feelings for each other, but things were complicated. There were arguments, jealousy issues, and disagreements about commitment. Hearing that felt like the ground dropped out from under me. I was mortified. Completely. In that moment, it hit me that I must have mixed up names. I had confused John with Roan, another friend of theirs who is openly gay. That meant I had unknowingly been flirting with the guy my close friend had feelings for, in front of her, all while believing it was harmless. What made it worse was the realization that John himself may have been intentionally flirting with me to provoke jealousy or get a reaction from Natty, which made me feel gross and used. I immediately apologized. Over and over. I told Natty how embarrassed I was, how bad I felt, and how I never would have acted that way if I had known the truth. She assured me repeatedly that it wasn't my fault, that I hadn't known, and that she didn't blame me at all. On the surface, it seemed resolved. We hugged, talked it through, and I left that conversation believing we were okay. But something shifted after that. Slowly, subtly, Natty and Blake started acting differently toward me. It wasn't anything overt or dramatic, no confrontations, no direct comments, but the energy changed. One of the first things I noticed was on social media. They stopped posting photos of me entirely, even when I was clearly part of the group and present in most of the pictures. In some cases, I realized I had been cropped out altogether, even from group shots where there was no obvious reason to exclude me. At first, I genuinely tried to give them the benefit of the doubt. I told myself they were just being considerate, since I've mentioned before that I'm more private online. I convinced myself I was reading too much into it, that social media isn't real life, and that it wasn't worth overthinking. Still, something about it sat uncomfortably with me. It felt intentional in a way I couldn't quite explain, like I was being quietly erased rather than openly confronted. A week later, Blake invited all of us to her birthday dinner, which was happening the very next day. When she invited me, she went out of her way to reassure me that she would completely understand if I couldn't make it, since it fell the day before my thesis deadline. That reassurance mattered to me because I was already overwhelmed and stretched thin. On top of that, the restaurant she chose was expensive and didn't have a single thing on the menu that I could eat due to my dietary restrictions. Because of that, I suggested a compromise. I could skip the dinner portion and join them afterward instead. I told her very clearly that if they weren't planning to do anything after dinner, I would still come to the dinner itself because I really didn't want to miss her birthday. She seemed genuinely happy with that plan and told me not to worry, that they were definitely going out afterward. Based on that conversation, I felt reassured and made space in my schedule. On the day of her birthday, I followed up to confirm timing. She told me to join after 7 p.m. and said she would message me when they left the restaurant. I got dressed, got ready, and waited. At around 7:15, not having heard anything, I sent a quick follow-up message. No response. I told myself she was probably busy enjoying her birthday, coordinating with the group, or just caught up in the moment. I didn't want to be annoying, so I waited a bit longer. After some time passed with no reply, I messaged Natty as well, just to check in. Again, no response. As the evening went on, I kept making excuses for them in my head. By 9 p.m., I was starting to feel hurt, but I still tried to rationalize it. Maybe they'd had a few drinks. Maybe dinner had run late. Maybe they just forgot to message in the chaos of a night. I didn't want to assume the worst. Around 10 p.m., I finally accepted that I probably wasn't going to hear from them and made other plans so I wouldn't spend the whole night sitting around feeling disappointed. At 11:30 p.m., Natty finally messaged me. She said they had gone home because they were too tired. There was no acknowledgement of the fact that I'd been waiting all evening, no apology for not replying, just a casual explanation. The next day, Blake messaged me as well and echoed the same thing, saying they'd been exhausted and had called it a night. She then suggested that instead, we all meet up at an event happening in another town. Without going into too much detail, that event conflicted with my personal morals. I didn't explicitly say that to her, but I felt guilty about missing her birthday dinner and worried I'd seem unsupportive if I declined again. So I agreed to go, with a caveat, at least in my own mind, that I would attend without actively participating in the parts that made me uncomfortable. The communication that day felt noticeably off. Messages were short, vague, and infrequent. I didn't hear much from anyone until they were already at the event. No one offered to walk with me or give me a lift, even though I live literally a 10-minute walk away from them. Instead, I had to take public transport, which ended up being a 1.5-hour bus ride to get there. When the bus was delayed by about 15 minutes, I immediately messaged to let them know. Their response was that they'd probably be leaving by then, but that we could maybe grab food quickly before heading home. This confused me because the event wasn't scheduled to finish for another 3 hours. I didn't understand why they were already talking about leaving early, especially after suggesting the meetup in the first place. At that point, everything just hit me at once. The long commute, the lack of communication, the feeling of being an afterthought yet again. I felt frustrated, dismissed, and honestly pretty foolish. The idea of spending 3 hours traveling just to maybe see them for 30 minutes over a rushed meal felt pointless and hurtful. So I apologized, again, and told them I wouldn't be coming after all. After that night, I stopped seeing them through direct invitations altogether. The only times I saw Natty or Blake were when we were both invited to the same events by mutual friends. What made it even more confusing was how warm and affectionate they were toward me in person. They'd hug me tightly, tell me how much they missed me, say things like, "We need to hang out properly soon," and act as though nothing was wrong. Yet outside of those chance encounters, they never invited me anywhere themselves, and whenever I invited them, they declined or responded vaguely, and then never followed up. There was this constant sense that something was happening just out of my view. They would reference things they'd done together, stories or jokes that clearly came from shared experiences I wasn't part of. A few times, one of them would mention the group chat and then abruptly stop mid-sentence, exchanging awkward looks with the other, like they'd accidentally said something they weren't supposed to. I tried not to take it personally. I genuinely didn't care about being included in every group conversation. But the secrecy, the discomfort when they realized I'd noticed, made it feel intentional rather than incidental. Then Roan mentioned the group chat to me directly. He seemed genuinely confused that I wasn't in it and asked why. I told him I didn't know there was one. Without hesitation, he added me. His reaction made it clear that, in his mind, my exclusion wasn't normal or expected. Natty and Blake's reactions, on the other hand, were immediate and unmistakable. They weren't openly hostile, but the mood shifted. They were quieter, less warm, and noticeably displeased that I'd been added. That was the first time I really felt like there was something being deliberately withheld from me. A little while later, I graduated from my postgraduate program. It was a huge milestone for me, something I'd worked incredibly hard for. Natty kept talking about how we needed to celebrate properly. After a few of those conversations, I took the initiative and planned a dinner and night out, organizing everything 2 weeks in advance. I checked everyone's availability, shared the plan, and everyone agreed. I felt hopeful again, like maybe things were getting back on track. The day before the celebration, Blake messaged to say she hadn't realized the plans were fully confirmed and had made other arrangements. She apologized repeatedly and seemed genuinely upset about it. I accepted her apology and gave her the benefit of the doubt. Things happen, misunderstandings occur. Trying to stay positive, I suggested that instead we celebrate the following month, combining my graduation with 2 other upcoming milestones. Then came Natty's birthday party, which ended up being the breaking point for me. When I arrived at the building, I buzzed and was let in, but when I reached the apartment door, no one answered. I knocked. Nothing. I messaged Natty. No response. I called. Straight to voicemail. I stood outside the door for about 15 minutes, feeling increasingly awkward and embarrassed, especially knowing the party was already in full swing inside. I could hear voices and music through the door. Eventually, Natty opened it, greeted me warmly, and apologized, saying they hadn't heard their phones. I went in, trying to shake off the discomfort. After chatting for a few minutes, Natty looked me up and down and then said almost casually, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I should have told you. The dress code is funeral-themed." I felt my stomach drop. The apartment was full of people, over 40 of them, all dressed in black, wearing elegant, coordinated outfits. Many of them were people Natty and Blake didn't even know that well. And there I was, standing in mostly white, in a simple cropped jumper and trousers, completely out of place. People started coming up to me, complimenting my outfit, saying I looked great. Each compliment somehow made it worse, because it only highlighted how different I looked from everyone else. While I was in there, I checked both group chats. There was no mention of a dress code anywhere. No message, no reminder, nothing. It wasn't something I'd missed. It simply hadn't been shared with me. Later that night, after already feeling off because of the dress code situation, I ended up talking to one of Natty and Blake's hometown friends, Mark. I'd met him a few times before at group gatherings, so this wasn't a stranger interaction. At first the conversation felt normal, but it slowly became uncomfortable. He started complimenting me excessively, calling me beautiful, charming, and very intelligent. I tried to brush it off politely, assuming he'd stop. He didn't. He went on to give very specific praise, saying that when he first met me he thought I was shy and closed off, but later realized I was actually selective with my energy. He said I didn't waste it on people who didn't deserve it and that he admired that about me. The compliments felt too personal for someone I barely knew. I tried to change the subject several times, but he kept returning to the same points, doubling down instead of backing off. Then Natty walked into the room. Mark immediately repeated everything he'd just said to her, including the part about me being selective with my energy. I watched Natty's face change in real time. She looked extremely uncomfortable, shot him a death stare, and then walked away without saying a word. After that, she completely ignored me for the rest of the night. No eye contact, no small talk, nothing. It felt like I had suddenly done something wrong, even though I hadn't encouraged the conversation or said anything inappropriate myself. I left the party early. No one checked in or asked if I was okay. I went home feeling embarrassed, confused, and hurt. It's been a month since then, and I haven't spoken to Natty or Blake. They haven't reached out to me either. With distance, I feel more disrespected the more I reflect on everything. The pattern is clear now. Being left out, vague communication, canceled plans, and warmth only when we ran into each other through mutual friends. What hurts most is that if they were upset with me, they never addressed it. If they didn't want to be friends anymore, they never said so. Instead, they acted affectionate in person while quietly excluding me. I put in effort, adjusted my schedule, showed up when it was inconvenient, and constantly gave them the benefit of the doubt. In return, I was made to feel like an afterthought. I keep wondering what caused the shift. The only thing I can think of is that I once mentioned I don't have childhood or long-term friends. I explained that I moved countries 9 years ago, lost touch with friends back home, and that many friendships here faded because people moved away due to immigration issues. Cultural differences also make forming close friendships harder. At the time, it felt like honest vulnerability. Now I wonder if they saw it as a red flag instead.